Tim Poole here, editor of Gambling Insider, and I'm here to reflect on another whirlwind week of gaming news, especially when it comes to the US. Every week these days seems like a whirlwind week for the US, but for DraftKings it really was. Not long after its Q2 report, where it announced plans to introduce a surcharge for gaming customers in states with tax rates of higher than 20%, notably we're thinking New York here and Illinois. It U-turned and backtracked on those plans this week. Chiefly, this came after FanDuel, chief competitor, said it wouldn't do the same. Competitors like Rush Street said no surcharges will be passed on, and it really shows the power of the people in the collective, because DraftKings stocks took a tumble. Analysts and shareholders, stockholders didn't seem too impressed with the surcharge plans, and there was perhaps thought of a company perhaps being a little too powerful by passing on charges to customers and kind of reducing the competitiveness of the market. Once FanDuel had announced it wouldn't be doing the same, DraftKings not too long after U-turned and said it preferred the value of the long-term customer. An interesting development, interesting to see that DraftKings tried something, and based on, again, the power of the people and the power of the collective, it didn't go through with it in the end. But from the power of the people to the power of one person, looking at leadership and executives actually not in this industry. This week we would have seen Starbucks appointed a new CEO as Chipotle's Barry Nickel took over. Starbucks stock went up 20% immediately, and Chipotle stock went down 10%. Now that's the kind of thing perhaps Entain were hoping maybe when Gavin Isaacs was hired, and obviously various tier 1 operators, when they hire a new CEO, a key man, woman, individual can give you that kind of bounce. But it's interesting to think who in gaming could carry that kind of gravitas, and perhaps they're already in a job. Peter Jackson at Flutter, which we'll talk about soon. But it was interesting to see Starbucks stocks go straight up, real encouragement with their new CEO, and interesting to see if anyone carries that kind of power and gravitas in gaming. Certainly we haven't necessarily seen that with recent appointments, but of course short-term swings, you maybe don't want to place too much emphasis on them either. But I mentioned Peter Jackson, and the final update, well, there's two updates really, plenty to discuss this week. We're talking Flutter Entertainment. First of all, both Playtech and Flutter have since confirmed in the region of $2 billion, that's what the reports are saying, a bid for Snaitech, Playtech's B2C Italian arm. This is what's interesting is Flutter said in its conference call it's open to more acquisitions. It was primarily talking about the US, but immediately reports surfaced about this Italian brand, and Playtech selling that will become a pure B2B supplier, again, no B2C operations, and it's not a bad injection of funds for it to do so, with Playtech looking like it's making a promising comeback of late, with some high profile partnerships and tier 1 operator deals being announced. For Flutter, it makes perfect sense, and it brings me to our final point, because Flutter itself announced results this week. Obviously FanDuel, a great week in the US, a great quarter in the US. What we're looking at with a lot of these companies, looking at DraftKings and competitors like that, high revenues, low profitability. The profitability is improving and the adjusted EBITDA is improving here and there, but FanDuel is really showing that it can be done, and it can be done well. Obviously Flutter has a lot of resources, obviously it has history, it has presence in a lot of markets, but they made a lot of moves early, and quite frankly revenue is up, net income is up, and the stock price has reacted well. It's an example of a firm, obviously a giant firm with a lot of resources, a lot of advantages that other companies don't have, but a firm that's being run right and doing really well. Unfortunately, some other operators haven't had that kind of success recently. Obviously, we're looking at the likes of Entain, but Flutter, obviously, as I say, size advantage, but it's showing it can be done, and it can be done well. That's where we're at, and that's where the industry is probably looking up to at the moment. For more updates, stay tuned to Gambling Insider.